I'm stuck and will be for the whatever time I've got left. With that, I have to do the right thing, whatever the consequences are.
Intellectuals and professors, they think of them as danger.
And you know what? We are a danger. We are a danger. We are a danger. We're a danger to the interests of the devil. I know the genocide hasn't stopped. They're still at it and they're still getting away with it, except they are not, because they cannot destroy the human soul. This is the difference, that this murderous scum perpetrating the genocide all over the world, our numbers are growing every day. People are beginning to scratch their head and go, yeah, why is it normal to commit genocide?
We're here in Palestine DeepDive studio in London with none other than Roger Waters, rock god, human rights activist, Palestine solidarity activist, many, many other things, to talk about the world.
Yeah.
And our place in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you up for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ahmed is also here, Alnaouq, journalist from Gaza, founder of We Are Not Numbers. Should I introduce myself too?
Yeah, why not?
My name is Matt Kennard. I am...
How do you spell that?
Canard.
Oh, that's...
No,
yeah,
it's
no.
not.
That's English for duck, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Yeah, I thought so. Carry on.
What am I? I'm a journalist with Declassified UK.
You are a journalist.
And a investigator of things. So, how you doing?
Well, getting over last night when we had all that mescal at dinner.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was lovely.
It was.
And Julian Assange was released from
I was going to ask you about that.
prison today, last night, in the middle of the night, which is a very good thing. Whatever the to's and fro's of about he had to cop a plea and blah, 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 at least the poor bugger is out. You know, he's been banged up in Belmarsh for, 4 years? And he was in the embassy for how long before that?
Since 2012, so 7 years in the embassy.
There you go.
And then 5 years in Belmarsh.
There you go.
And also under house arrest even before the embassy.
Exactly.
So yeah, he's been through it.
Yeah. And he's a completely innocent man and a great journalist and all the rest of it. So if he was up to it, really what we should be saying is, great, now get back to work because we need you. And it's going to be very, very hard. And the thing is, in a way that they may have done their job, and I hope they haven't. Well, you're a journalist, because they may have an influence on shutting up other people who might have thought, I could do that. I could tell the world the truth about USA's war crimes in Baghdad, from January 2007 or whenever it was. And I'm sure they've had an effect.
For sure. I think if you look at what the only newspaper that was ever half decent in this country was The Guardian, right?
The what?
The Guardian. And it's definitely, when I say half decent, I mean half decent. And now it's fully not decent at all.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is the British security state clamped down on them after the WikiLeaks revelations, and Snowden too in 2013.
Yeah, they were one of
They went for him.
They were one of the papers that printed it all, along with the New York Times.
And then they started we've done work on this. There was a period in 2018 where there was like 6 months of stories that were just sourced to anonymous people that were trying to link him to Trump and Russia. And the crescendo of that was that he was then put into Belmarsh in April 2019. But if you read the diaries of the minister who was involved in the negotiations, they wanted to get him out at the end of that year, and it kind of chimes. So the Guardian were just allowing themselves to be used by dark forces to hammer the shit out of this guy that gave them all their massive scoops. So it's an ugly story.
Yeah.
But you visited him, right, in Belmarsh?
Yeah.
How was that?
last September. Oh, well, it was fascinating and very moving and very upsetting, and in sort of not that order, more upsetting than anything else. All those bloody doors clanging behind you every time you moved, and leaving was the worst thing. When we left, I was there with Yanis Varoufakis and Stella and the boys, and when you get there, you may not notice that the prisoner is sitting in a red chair and you're all sitting in blue chairs, the visitors. But you bloody well notice when you leave, because you all queue up to go out. But they don't move until the last visitor has left. So you look behind you and there's this 30 blokes sitting on red chairs where they were with their families or their visitors or whatever all the time. Like that. Just waiting, and Julian wasn't catching anybody's eyes. Obviously, something he's done time and time and time again. But imagine, and they're not allowed to move. And then, as the last visitor leaves the room and the door clanks shut, back to your cells for 23 hours a day. I mean, you know, it's like anything that we do ever. It's like trying to talk about Gaza or getting involved in Palestine at all. There's no way to imagine what it's like to be bombed constantly, or to be banged up in a little cell in Belmarsh for 4 years, 23 hours a day. Incredible. So thank God, not that there is a God, he's out, and that he's gone off to Australia, and hopefully, you know, he'll be all right. He'll recover, because he needs to recover. He was not well last September.
That's what I was going to ask. What kind of condition was he in?
Do you know what? He sort of looked all right, and he had that little sardonic smile that comes across him occasionally, and he spoke very quiet voice, and we had a good sort of conversation without labouring stuff at all. But at one point I said to him, partly to be polite, but also because I was slightly surprised and whatever, I said, "You're looking good, man," or something like that. And he looked back at me like that, and he paused for a minute, and he went, "I'm not." and I was very moved by that, but I just accepted it. I went, "No, you're not. I get it." And he didn't have to elaborate, go into any detail. He said, "I'm not good." Yeah.
I'm very happy that he's out now and he's free, and I hope that he stays free and safe. But this actually reminded me of some recordings that we recently heard from some of the Palestinians who were in Israeli prisons in Gaza, by the way, because they have built some prisons inside Gaza,
Yeah.
and in Israel. And these prisoners who went out of prison, they told horrific testimony about what happened to them in the Israeli prisons. Torture is way worse. It's 100 times worse than Guantanamo. And I remember 2 days ago, I heard a recording for one of the prisoners, and he said that the Israelis blindfolded him, and they stripped him naked, and they had dogs have sex with him. So what's going on there in prison is unbelievable. It's beyond horrific. They also believe that now we are in a turning point in history. The world has seen things in Gaza that hasn't seen before. Today, just this morning, I saw a video of, these airdrops, and they landed in a tent for people. I don't know how many people were killed in this tent, and women and the children were all like just running towards this airdrop just to collect some food to survive. Recently, we heard that yes, 15,000 children were killed in Gaza, but there's another 21,000 children missing right now. Horror is beyond measure. It's unfathomable.
I read that this morning. I can't remember what I was reading, but I read that figure this morning.
And last week I was in Beirut, and I was in a panel with another journalist who came from Gaza, and he told me stuff that he's seen in Gaza that are very, very different from what we hear in the news. So it's beyond imagination. And at that panel, I was asked if this war, it changed me in a way or another, and I told him that this war made me 100 or 1,000 times stronger than ever before. And this war it changed so many people. And even Matt told me that this war changed him forever. So I really want to understand, I want to ask you, if you may, did this war, did this genocide in Gaza changed you or changed something in you?
Absolutely, yeah. You can't. Nobody can ignore it anymore. The cat is out of the bag. They've completely exposed themselves for the awful, dreadful people that they are. The Israelis I'm talking about, and not just the government, because it's largely supported by the people of Israel.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking about Jews. It doesn't matter who does this. It doesn't matter obviously what you're. Well, because we did a gig last Friday, and there was about 50 or something people with the Israeli flags chanting, calling me an anti-Semite, and all that nonsense, which is a complete side issue. This has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. None of it has anything to. Obviously, I'm not an anti-Semite. Neither is anybody else that I know. If we were anti-Semites, we'd be off sitting in our room, being anti-Semitic and hating Jews. Well, we don't give a shit whether you're a Jew or not. It's irrelevant. Or a Muslim or a Christian. It's completely irrelevant. But what is not irrelevant is that we care about human rights. So I've been banging on about this for years and years and years. It's only about human rights.
Exactly.
I make this point constantly. And what this war, it's not a war. Every time I hear them say, I'm not going to say it, I'm not going to call it a war. It is not a war. It's a genocide. It is a bunch of Nazi thugs murdering people. It has nothing to do with a war. It's exactly the same as the Warsaw Ghetto, with Germans murdering Jewish people. This is Israelis murdering Palestinians. It's not a war. So let's get that out of the way. It drives me crazy when every news item, when the war in Gaza, it's not a war. Anyway, that's a personal opinion of us. But what's extraordinary about now is that they've copped to it. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer and Biden and Trump and Pence, all the politicians and whoever, the German bloke and Macron and blah, 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 all over Europe. And they've all seen it happen. They know we're all seeing it happen. And they're all going, it's okay. And then the WCJ
normalized.
comes out. It's normalized completely, and they find this court who we looked at and we thought, Christ almighty, this is stuffed with people who won't make any sense. And they did, all except there was one dissenting voice. They all said they're committing genocide and we're watching it and it's quite obvious. And the Israelis have to stop. And the Israelis went, we're not going to stop. We want their land and we want them out. And we've always said so. And now we're being completely open about it. And we watch it, and it's happening in front of us. So what we, interested parties, are seeing right in front of our eyes is the torture and the this and the burning alive and the rape and the what, all done by Israelis on Palestinians in front of our very eyes, with our leaders and our press all going, well, they have a right to defend themselves. And no, they're not defending themselves. They're murdering a whole people, and also to get them off their land so they can steal it. And it's right in front of our eyes. And it was always a terrible mistake. It was a terrible mistake, the Balfour Declaration in 1917, and it was a terrible mistake all through the 30s to be supporting the settling of. My father was in Jerusalem in 1934 and 1935. He wrote letters home to my grandmother saying how worried he was about the Zionist movement in Palestine and the settling of the land by people from America and from Northern Europe and the buying up of. He said, this is not going to end well, particularly for the local indigenous people, the Palestinians, the Arabs who live there. Which is interesting. I've got the letters.
And these Zionist militias, they killed the British people in Jerusalem.
Absolutely. Well, the King David Hotel,
David
they
Hotel,
killed
yeah.
80 in one night. I believe 80 people in one night.
But why has it become very normalized, the killing of children? Now we're talking about 15,000 children killed. As it's like, it's okay, Palestinians can die.
Well-
they can be in prison, it's okay. But when an Israeli is killed, like the whole world rages.
Yeah.
And the media start talking and like lying about what actually happened and 40 decapitated babies. But when the Palestinians actually die, right in front of everyone, when they're besieged, when they're starved, when they're killed for 9 months, like, it's normalized, it's okay, the Palestinians can't die.
Well, this is-
Why is it happening?
Well, it's simply because that's what the ruling class, that's the narrative that they want people to believe, and they're quite prepared to lie about it, and so they are. And they think if they just go on lying about it, that they will be able to normalize it. And they had almost succeeded in the United States and possibly even in Great Britain and possibly even in France and Germany. In Germany, they'd completely succeeded. The Germans are unbearably susceptible to the propaganda that, it's terrorists against Democrats. That's the story they've tried to sell. And somehow that Israel is democratic, which is ludicrous, obviously, because it's a white supremacist apartheid enterprise, and there's nothing to do with democracy. Anyway, but that's why this has changed it. The genocide that's going on in the West Bank as well as in Gaza has changed everything, because they are no longer trying to hide it. There's no pretense left anywhere, except that there is, even under these extreme circumstances of everything that you describe, and the fact that journalists like Matt are telling us, and, Max Nairn at the Grey Zone and Electronic Intifada and Palestine DeepDive, where we are now, are telling us the truth about all of these things. They are still trying to pretend it's normal. When I did my show, This Is Not a Drill, funnily enough, there's a song I do in it called "Is This the Life We Really Want?" And I won't tell you what any of the lyrics are, but it's about that basic thing. It finishes up my song that I write, that going, the last line is, "It's normal," having
It's
just
normal.
described absolute horror.
What's terrifying is that now the Israelis don't hide their massacres anymore. They don't hide it.
No.
I've seen many videos of Israeli soldiers going to Gaza houses after they have killed and maimed and I don't know what else they did. And they would say that they're here to kill the people in Gaza, the children of Gaza. They're proud about it.
Yep.
And the media just doesn't care.
Well,
And, I was in one
the
of the TV
media's bought and
stations.
paid for. So the media has been told what story they're to sell. And they have no voice. The mainstream media has no voice.
No,
they
not at
print
all.
what they're told to print. And that's the end of it.
One of these TVs that hosted me after I lost my family, I don't know if you know about it or not. I lost 21 members of my family.
Yeah, I know that.
14 of them are children. Then I went to one of the TV stations and it was in the screens, Israel at war. So after everything Israel did, it is Israel that is at war. So what does that tell you about the Western media?
Well, it tells you everything that we've been saying. But we all agree on that, obviously, here. You won't find a dissenting voice at this table.
Go on. No, I was going to ask, just following on from what Ahmed's been saying, 40 years ago, maybe longer, you had a lot of cultural figures speaking out on the issues of the day. Like if you look at the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, now there's barely anyone. You're putting your head above the parapet and talking out. But there's not many. There's like Susan Sarandon and there are a couple of others, but it's few and far between. Do you sense the same thing, that there's just been a closing of the mind in terms of the cultural sphere? And if you do agree with that, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do get it. I do get that it's happened. It's a slow process of desensitization, I think, in society, in general. And with me, it sort of goes back to the hopes and dreams that I had as a 16-year-old, walking from Aldermaston to Trafalgar Square and listening to Bertrand Russell back in the day,
Wow.
with him talking about us getting rid of the independent nuclear deterrent and the Trident things and the this and that, and thinking that we might have a chance of changing government policy and blah, blah. And here we are now. And it wouldn't surprise me if we don't wake up in the morning because we're all dead. Because the Third World War will have happened. I mean, look what they're doing in the Ukraine. And they're now, the Ukrainians are now using American missiles to knock out Russian early warning. That's the most dangerous thing that they could possibly be doing is attacking Russian defense systems. It's insane. But that's another question. But what has happened? How have we become desensitized? Well, I guess by never stopping murdering people for our nefarious gains. So if you want to carpet bomb Laos because it's next door to Cambodia or next door to Vietnam or whatever, and because you're in Vietnam for some reason that nobody can fathom, except you're worried about the domino effect of communism spreading around the world and, you know, and destroying democracy. Obviously, that was all complete nonsense, and it's there, and we see what happened. And what is the upshot of it? But nevertheless, we never did anything about it. We never went, God, what a terrible mistake that was. Let's never do that again. And the American empire is a terrible, terrible, evil leader. And we follow. Willy-nilly, the Europeans have followed America down its terrible, terrible path of bloodshed and hegemony all over, not just all over Central and South America, but all over the world, interfering in other people's politics. And what for? For lithium or copper or whatever they happen to have. It has nothing to do with anything except power and money. Why did they oust the democratically elected president of Peru last year? Lithium. Or whatever it is, and it's so obvious, and it's so no. So, why do I keep coming back to human rights? Well, hold on a minute. It's 1948, December the 10th, Paris, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, blah blah blah, 30 articles. Go and read them, whoever you are out there, if you haven't. They're very, very simple. We have the right to life and property and blah 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 under the law. No, we don't. We don't have any rights, but we seem content. And it's interesting because we're coming up to a general election in England. We the people appear content not to have any human rights because in England we sort of feel as if maybe we do because we're not having genocide committed on them like his family are. But imagine if we were, how we would feel. But luckily, we three round this table and everybody watching this program and almost everyone I ever speak to has enough empathy in their heart that it doesn't matter that they're not being murdered. They care about the brothers and sisters who are. And so we fight back as hard as... Now, why more of us in the music industry don't fight back? I don't know how they do it.
Is it fear?
It's all over the world, I think. There are a few people who stand up to be counted, but there are an awful lot of people who don't. I know a few of them in my industry who've come clean to me and said, you can't ever tell anyone this, but I really admire you for standing up, and I would, but I'm scared shitless. My career, gone in a heartbeat. The Israeli lobby will destroy my livelihood in a heartbeat.
The Israeli lobby, are they that powerful?
Yes.
Can you talk about
They own Congress as well. It's not just the music industry or anything. The Israeli lobby, we know, owns Congress. You know, all this talk about, Miriam Adelson is giving Donald Trump $100 million. I mean, $100 million is a lot of dosh. And it's not just her.
You've been a victim of the Israel lobby, though. like
Yeah, well, they
infamously. Can you talk a little bit about what they've done to you and how do they operate? If they like you're speaking out for Palestine, so you're a prominent figure.
Yeah.
So you're obviously going to be a target for them. But how do they go about it? What's their mechanism for destroying advocates for Palestine that are in the mainstream?
Well, it's a bit like if you go on a Saturday in London and join the march for Palestine, pro-Palestinian march, a protest against the genocide. Very, very simple. And you join that march and you go. The powers that be, through the mainstream media, will be telling everybody that you are a hate monger and a potential terrorist. They tried to lock Craig Murray up, saying he was a terrorist, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? So, so that's what they do. They're trying to say that anti-Semitism is rife and that it's a purveying of hatred. And it's dangerous, and the marches should be banned. And they're trying to send the police in, all militarized with truncheons to break it up. And it's all complete bullshit. No, these are good, honest people who have empathy for their brothers and sisters in Palestine and are protesting the fact that the government of this country is complicit in the murder of babies. That's what has nothing to do with anti-Semitism or hatred with the people. The people who are marching are loving people, and they get beaten up by the police. And it's worse in Germany, and it's worse on the campuses in university in Columbia and places. They send in brown shirts, armed to the teeth, to beat them to the floor with. All they're doing is they say, we've got a peaceful encampment here because you are you're complicit in the genocide of a whole people, and it's wrong. It's complete, and we all know it is.
What about the personal impact of the attacks on you? Because obviously, as someone who's got a long history of fighting for human rights against racism, and they're trying to paint you as an anti-Semite, does it hurt, or has it hurted, or do you manage to brush it off?
It's cost me millions of dollars.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
They go, if I'm looking for somebody to distribute my Us and Them movie or something, or when I made the wall movie of my tour or whatever, I'll never forget it. It premiered at Toronto, the Toronto Film Festival, and whatever. And some bloke watched it, and he was from Netflix or one of those things. And the next morning, he was like, "This is fantastic. I love it. We're definitely going to buy it and put it out." Call us tomorrow. And the next day, Mark Fennick or whoever it was called him up and said, "Great, let's get down to it. Shall we have a meeting and draw up contracts and what?" And the guy went, "Actually, we've been thinking." He said, "I'm not sure it's exactly right for us." They'd obviously had one board meeting, and the lobby had come in and said, "You're not touching that. It's Roger Waters. He's an anti-Semite hate monger, and whatever he is or whatever, we want him dead. Yeah. You are not touching anything that he has anything to." So I've been fighting that for 15, 20 years. But you get used to it, And they have not destroyed me. Because I do not lie down, and I do not go away, and I do bite back. And I have love and truth on my side. And they are the ones who are peddling hatred and lies. And we, those of us who believe in empathy and truth and love, our numbers are growing exponentially. This is the difference, that this murderous scum perpetrating the genocide on the Palestinians, that all over the world, our numbers are growing every day. And they, peddling their lies is getting harder and harder and harder, because people are beginning to scratch their head and go, yeah, why is it normal to commit genocide? Why are our governments supporting it? Well, obviously to make money. They're selling arms and this, but we know that the armaments industry is a way of stealing money from poor people, taxpayers, working people, and giving it to rich people, i.e. the people who are invested in Lockheed and Grumman and Raytheon and all the other arms companies, and BEA or whatever they're called.
So I understand that the numbers of The people who are like me and you are growing exponentially. They are. For the past 9 months, I have seen lots of protests in the UK and all around the world. In the UK, in London, hundreds of thousands of people protest every week. But the genocide did not stop.
No.
And the UK government has not changed its position on Palestine. So how can we, if we are a democracy and a free country, how can we actually pressure our government to change course?
Well, all we can do is, it sounds stupid, but all we can do, I think, is sit round this table and talk to one another as kindred spirits, as you as a Gazan and him, you know, us as Londoners, or whatever we are, and look at each other in disbelief, and rather than just howl and scratch our eyes out in our anguish, say, oh my God, it happened. Big Brother has won the battle so far. We are living in 1984. There is a ministry of truth. It's called the mainstream media that does nothing but tell lies about what's actually happening in the world. So, and we, the people, are persuaded by this propaganda to accept genocide and to accept perpetual warfare, simply because we allowed it to creep up on us slowly enough that we thought, oh, well, there was the Red Menace, you know, Reds under the bed and all that. And although we've all agreed that Senator McCarthy was a bit of a lunatic and, you know, attacked people in Hollywood and blah, blah, and the blacklists and all that, was a bit iffy, we nevertheless accepted it, and we didn't go, hang on, this is... And then when Dwight D. Eisenhower sat down in 1961 at the end of his reign as President of the United States and made his military-industrial warning speech to everybody, maybe everybody heard it and listened to it, but they went, but you know, well, we need to have armies, and it's okay if there's the odd war here or there against people, you know. Maybe it's actually doesn't do us any harm. Yeah, it does. It does. It's a slow death for everybody in the world, including you. So that's what this is. I know the genocide hasn't stopped. They're still at it, and they're still getting away with it, except they are not, because they cannot destroy the human soul. This is what I was talking about earlier today, you know. We do love one another. We do feel empathy for all the children in Gaza and for their parents. And it's unimaginable to us that our leaders are encouraging this. And in Ukraine, the slaughter of young and middle-aged Ukrainian men and Russian men in the Ukraine, which obviously is an absurd war to be allowing it to go on, but it suits them. It suits their agenda. They like it. It's good for them, but it's bad for every other human being in the world, sadly.
Why did your mates in Pink Floyd do a song for Ukraine, but they didn't do one for Gaza?
Well, that's Gilmore. Well, I think Nicky, my friend Nicky, and he is my friend,
Okay.
I think he was involved in it, but that's just because he's thoughtless.
But would they do one for Gaza as well, or not?
I haven't the faintest idea. I shouldn't think so. I mean, it was his wife who got, like, I think it was 13 million tweets responses or 20 million saying that I was a raging anti-Semite and that I had to be stopped. Polly Sampson.
Right.
So, but obviously what Dave did, making that daft record with a Ukrainian and that's a very nationalistic song and whatever, and I don't know anything about the guy, was very misguided. Anything that was waving a flag and promoting the war in Ukraine was the worst thing anybody could do for the people of Ukraine. They'd almost got it sorted. Even after the Maidan coup in 2014, where they removed the democratically elected government of Ukraine in an illegal coup financed by Washington. And everybody knows it because of the Victoria Nuland phone call to the ambassador and blah, blah, blah. So even after that, and then they started shelling the people in Donbass in 2014, it was another 8 years before Putin and the Russian and the people of Russia had had enough and went, no, we're going to have to come in and sort you lot out. And they did with their, quote, special military operation. But Zelensky wanted to put a stop to it. To his credit, mind you, he had stood absolutely his platform for becoming president in the election where he was elected president was, I'm going to make peace with Donbass. I'm going to end the civil war. I'm going to effect the Minsk Accords, which have been sorted out. He'd done all that, and the West put an end to it. The Americans put an end to it, aided and abetted by Boris Karloff. I mean, Johnson.
But it's interesting listening to you because...
And they murdered all those kids. Sorry, I'm
No,
sorry.
but I just wonder where you get your strength from, because what you're talking, you're like when you talk about Gaza or Julian Assange, these are red lines, not just for cultural figures, for anyone who's in any kind of institution which has control over the discourse, and you get hammered. And that's why people don't touch that stuff. So obviously you get a lot of hits. Where do you get your strength from? What is it that drives you to speak out?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's my mum. I've said this often before. But the thing is, I'm not in an institution of any kind.
Yeah.
I'm not a one-man band. I work with... When I'm on the road, there's like 170 of us on the road together. And we're a family. We're a circus family. We love one another. And the feeling is great. And I love working with other people. But it's my thing. All right? So, but the thing is that I have no choice in the matter. Because my mum, when I was 13 years old, famously one day, she said, you're going to have to think things out about things as you get older, Roger, and there'll be a lot of things in your life. And those are Julian Assange, whatever, Ukraine, whatever, those are three things like this. And when you are concerned about anything, you're going to have to think about, you have to read. You have to read everything you can find about whatever the situation is. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, and then read some more. And don't just read the opinions of people who agree with you. Read everything and read the contra opinions or whatever. When you've done that, you've done all the heavy work, all the heavy lifting. It's over. The rest is easy. Oh, what do I do then, Mum? She said, you do the right thing. So, and I love her for that. I think, what a great lesson for a parent to give a child, because it presupposes that there is a right thing to do, therefore you have to believe in ethics and philosophy and a moral compass and figuring out what the right thing to do might be. And so I'm stuck and will be for the whatever time I've got left with that. I have to do the right thing, whatever the consequences are. It doesn't matter. And so do millions, billions of us all over the world. We have to do that. We have to do the right thing. And bugger the consequences. I'm lucky that I've somehow managed to finagle myself into a position of enough power that so far, touch wood, they have failed to destroy me. And they will. The Israeli establishment and the political establishment. I know it's stupid to say this because they could snuff me out in a heartbeat. You know, it's just one bullet in the back of the head, and they do kill people. We know they do.
Yeah,
we've seen it. You know, all those unsolved whatevers. People dead in the Clintons' fish pond, and there's a few of those I'm told. But I don't know. I don't really want to go there.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back, Ahmed, to that. Is this changing anything? Yeah, it is. It's out in the open. It's murder in broad daylight, and it's being perpetrated by our governments. The Americans, the Brits, the French, the Germans, the Dutch, the Danish, the Swedish, the Finnish, the blah blah, the Ukrainians, all of them. All of us, in plain sight, and we will not swallow it. None of it. You know, we round this table. But what you're asking is, And this is the question, is what do we do? What can we, in the face of them taking no notice of any truth or any love or any of this stuff, what do we do? Well, we've got Fiona and Leanne as a signpost to the future, you know. Fiona's, well, she's standing in Stratford and Bow, and Leanne's standing in North Ilford. And of course, Andrew Feinstein is standing in, even more importantly, I think, in Hopen and St Pancras, yeah, where he's standing against Keir Starmer, who is one of the chief murdering swine in the world. And he's supposed to be in opposition to the murdering swine, the Tories, led by Rishi Sunak. He's supposed to be the opposition, and he's in cahoots with them. He's in exactly the same position. He connived with the Israeli lobby to destroy the career of Jeremy Corbyn, who actually did care about working people, and he cared about human rights, whereas Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer don't give a fig for human rights. Yours, mine, the Israelis, anybody. They couldn't care less. Which is, so that's where I keep coming back to it, December the 10th, 1948.
Do you know, Roger, I think that Israel is doing something, even, you talked about we're doing murder. But I think that they're doing something worse than murder in Gaza, which is a humiliation. They have humiliated the people. They're trying to humiliate the people. And I'm telling, I've said this before to my friends that maybe I shouldn't say that, but I will say it anyway. I said that I'm happy that my family were killed on the 22nd of October. Because what happened to people now, after that, is worse than death.
Yeah.
You know, I have still, one of my sisters who survived the bombing, she has been living a nightmare for 9 months now. Now, she and her 7 children have hepatitis B.
Have what?
Yeah.
Hepatitis
B, yeah.
Yeah. And they are isolated from everyone. She and her 7 children. No one talked to them, no one visited them, and they have been starving for many months. What's happening there, it's worse than murder. It's really worse. And sometimes I feel I'm relieved that the majority of my family died, and they're relieved now. But in a better
dreadful indictment that is of the rest of the world, and of we in the West who don't stand up to be counted. And all my colleagues in the music industry who don't stand up to be counted. You know, all those, and I'm not going to start naming names because there's too many. And you think, how do you sleep? Sorry to quote John Lennon, Paul. But how did they sleep? I don't get it. Brian Eno told me he ran into Gilmore in the street the other day, and he said he looked a bit sheepish. Now, that's him putting ideas. I shouldn't really have quoted Brian Eno, who I adore. But it's an interesting idea. I wonder if he does ever wake up and go, my God, maybe Roger's right and I'm wrong. I doubt it, because he's not that kind of animal. He's a bit more equal than others, to quote George Orwell.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not go there. Look, you've set me off now.
No, but it is interesting, like that whole thing of how can a person, if they're even just have a baseline moral code, look at what we've been looking at for 8 months and still think, oh, it's not in my interest to speak out now. Or
even still think the Israelis have a right to defend themselves, which comes before it's not in my interest to speak out.
Yeah.
That would be to say, I know this is wrong, but I'm not going to speak out because I may suffer a consequence.
I think a lot of people are like that, though.
Well, you may well be.
I think most people know now, because as you say, it's out in the open. I think most people now, there's so few voices, just because the people in that industry, in your industry, and many others are cowards, moral cowards who would prefer to preserve the benefits they have in life than actually speak out on a great issue of the day. I don't understand it though. It's crazy to me to because it's like you say, like, I feel the same as you. Like, there's no choice. When you see that, you think, well, I'm going to do everything I can to stop that now. It's
well,
natural.
isn't it interesting though that how tout ça change, tout c'est la même chose. Back in 1938, Bertelsmann, who were the people I was going to do a record deal with, my new record, were publishers in Germany, and by this time, you know, Hitler's in the Reichstag and it's blah, 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 and it's taken over and it's a one-party system and one-state system. So they started printing anti-Jewish leaflets, and they did all of that back then, Bertelsmann's. This is the parent company of BMG. It was the record company that I was going to do a deal with. And they went, so don't tell me that in 1938 or 39 or whenever, Germans didn't know who Hitler was and what Goering was like and Goebbels. I mean, they'd already, no, 38 was Kristallnacht. They'd already watched the murder of all the brown shirts because they were getting in the way a bit. So they knew what was going, but they went, oh, let's not rock the boat. We're doing all right. Yeah. We're making a few quid, you know, and Hitler's building nice roads and there's the Volkswagen. And whatever it was, so what if he calls of you Jews? Who cares? You know, why? It's not my problem. That's because they couldn't go, well, hang on, how would I feel if I was a Jew? And it was being done to me. It's what I keep coming back to the same thing. Everybody has to have human rights, including Jews, or Slavs, or Gypsies, or communists, or gay people, or whatever it might be. And so we're now, tout ça change, tout c'est la même chose. We're faced with exactly the same thing now. We all know that the United States of America is a criminal empire. It's a criminal enterprise. And we know that the state of Israel is a group of vicious, malicious gangsters out to murder and humiliate a whole people in order to express their absolute feeling of supremacy about them. They've said constantly over the last years that they are superior because God told them so, and that Palestinians are animals, they're not human.
And by the way, this started way before the 7th of October.
Of course.
My father used to work in Israel in the 70s and 80s, like
of course,
like all the Palestinians in Gaza who were forced to work in Israel because they have crushed the economy of Gaza. And my father told me, and I keep repeating this story over and over again, my father told me that his boss, his Israeli boss, told him right in his face that God only created the Israelites as humans and the rest of the world as animals who were created only to serve the Israelites. And when they were disgusted with the shapes of these animals, they ask God to transform them into a human-like animals. They believe in that, and they have told that to my father. And of course, this doesn't represent all the Israelis or all the Jews, of course not. But there is some of them are really view us as animals, as we are less, as we are inferior to them.
Yeah.
That is the problem. So how do you deal with people who don't see you as a human?
Well, it's written in lots of Israeli script. I'm not saying scripture necessarily, because I don't study it, you know. If my mum said you have to read everything from the other side as well, Mum, I'm not learning Hebrew. That ain't gonna happen, Mum. Well, you could read a translation. I have read the translation and I've read exactly what you've just said to me. So
it's there.
So I've read there, so it's there, but the interesting thing is, here it is in front of us, open. We can see it. It's obvious what's happening. So can everybody else in the world. Everyone can see it. But clearly people have agendas that prevent them from acknowledging it in any ways. Every single Christian and evangelical, and I believe there's nearly 100 million of them in the United States, they believe in the second coming and Armageddon, and they're just waiting for the Third World War so that they can join hands with Mike Pence and Jesus and go to heaven.
Mike Pence and Jesus.
While the rest of us, all you Muslims and all us agnostic, we all burn in hell forever. Yeah. And all the Jews, let us not forget. I'm sorry to be the one to have to tell Mrs. Addleston this, but you're going to burn in hell forever too. So, you know.
So
get
there's
used
another.
to the idea.
There is another another thing. A few weeks ago, Matt and I did this interview here,
Yeah.
and then I asked him to tell me what does Zionism mean to him, and he responded.
I watched it, but
Oh, you've watched it?
Yeah, of course.
So
I always watch.
surprisingly, this clip got millions of views on Instagram and Twitter, and this told me that people really
Remind
want to
me
understand.
come and remind for our viewers what was the conversation? Go on, with him.
Well, I
Want
think
me
he
to
could say
replay it
more.
now? We just. What did we say? It was a, what was it, 2-minute thing
Yeah.
where we just defined what Zionism is. That there's nothing progressive about it. You know, this is you've come up against this plenty of times. Like,
Yeah.
people try and present it as this wonderful, like, Jewish right to self-determination, blah blah blah, progressive idea, and it's the opposite. It's the same as what they used Manifest Destiny to
Yeah, of
kill
course.
the Native
Yeah.
Americans, and yeah, it was simple, but like Ahmed saying, it got millions of views, and we didn't get smashed either.
Well,
Like,
that,
and it was, and we would
gives
have.
us a hope.
Of course, sir, that's what I'm saying. Times have changed.
It got millions of views, and this tells me that people really want to understand. They really want to know what these topics are, because in the Western media, no one is allowed to discuss them.
Well, this is why I bang the table every time I get involved in a conversation with almost anybody and say, human rights, it's a tiny platform. It solves everything. All you have to do is you have to acknowledge, and then you tell your friends and they acknowledge. We have to get everyone in the world to acknowledge the idea that human beings have inalienable rights, and we have to figure out how to observe those rights.
But you know, Roger, it's mind-boggling for me that we, the Palestinians, have to remind the world that we, the Palestinians, we have the right to live. That my nieces and nephews, the 14 kids, had the right to live. We should not
Of course not.
tell the world that we have the right to live. It should be common sense.
Yes, it should be. That's why we're having this conversation around this table, and why we're all flabbergasted that the whole world doesn't see this and hasn't marched on Parliament and said, stop. In the name of everything, stop now. These people are human beings, and we human beings, we have to agree that we all have equal inalienable rights. All human beings. We all agreed it on the 10th of December 1948 in Paris. Let's live up to it. And if there's a few crazy lunatics, Jewish people, that's all. It doesn't matter. You get crazy lunatics who are Christian. You get crazy lunatics who are Muslim. You get crazy lunatics who are atheists. It doesn't matter what that is, all that stuff. But it happens that in Israel at the moment, there are crazy lunatics who think they're superior to the indigenous people of the region, and they're killing them so they can steal their furniture and their land and their olive trees. And that is going on under your noses, and you have to get together and put a stop to it now. Unfortunately, this tiny cabal has the support of the most well-equipped military cabal in the world, which is the United States of America. And they are supporting this genocide. And that's why it's so hard to control it. And also, they control the whole system of currency that's based upon the dollar. And the buying and selling of oil up until last week was all based on the dollar. You could only buy or sell oil on a dollar. And so they have an enormous amount of economic power, and they use it to maintain the situation there. And they couldn't give a fuck about people being humiliated and murdered and raped and burned alive and starved to death. They don't care. They're monsters.
And then they call us the animals.
And they call you terrorists. I mean, it's
and animals, human animals.
Yeah.
But you've been in this game for a while, like the politics. Well, since you were a kid and you had that conversation with your mum.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's all out in the open now and people are awake. I agree with you. But you've been around longer than us. Like, is it different to anything you've seen before? Because obviously there was a war in Iraq in 2003. There was Vietnam. These kind of uprisings where people's eyes were open. But it does feel like this is a bit different.
It's different because of the iPhone, I think. People can watch it.
Yeah.
And they do watch it.
Yeah.
I try not to watch it because I can't bear it, you know, but I do watch it occasionally, and you see it and you think. And so, yeah, what's going to happen? I don't know. From day to day, I think, what happens next? I mean, at least if we were to, I don't know, because that, you know, I don't think they're going to be allowed to murder all these people, who are, by the way, our people.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I wrote a song with my friends, the Trio Cubano, you know, with a couple of ouds and a whatever. And it's about our boys. It says our boys, mother's boys. Oh, this. But in the end, they're our boys. All children are all of our children. We share children. They're a shared asset all over the world. It doesn't matter what colour we are or nationality. All children are our children, and we have to protect them. They don't understand that in Washington. They're playing an evil game that is all about. I mean, you can't. You only have to listen to 4 words out of the mouth of somebody like Lindsey Graham to understand that it's a complete joke. There's no connection with language or philosophy or the reality of human feelings in Lindsey Graham. He's just like a weird. He's like, what's that? Those films about that weird puppet with the bulging eyes. He's like a cartoon character, but he's a puppet. He's not called Robbie, but he's something like Chucky.
Chucky, right? Yeah, horrible.
Right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
and he's always murdering people.
Yeah,
Well, that's Lindsey Graham is Chucky, you know. And you go, it's all very well for us to laugh about it, but it's not funny. He's taken seriously in Washington by people, and he's a complete. But they're nearly all complete monsters.
Yeah, there was that congressman who was saying, I want to wipe out. I want everyone to be gone in Gaza. Like, it's mad.
Yeah.
Let's get it over
That's
with.
just like Nazi talk.
Finish them off.
Yeah,
They don't care.
Yeah, they are Nazis.
Yeah,
they
got the mentality of it around this issue. Yeah, lads.
Yeah.
How does this end? It doesn't end well, in my opinion, because you got Israel with however many nukes.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go down without letting those off somewhere.
You think they'll take us all with them if they
They
think
would.
they
Well, if they're threatened, if they feel threatened existentially, if there's a real existential threat, they will let those things off. They're not there for fun, are they?
I don't think they can use it.
like everybody else in the world who's got nukes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they all say, is if they feel or they feel they're existentially threatened, they'll use them. That is a big worry. That's why, obviously, we should demand the end of nuclear weapons. But that is another subject.
Yeah.
But the way that this here in London now, I'll just say this because it's important, and that is, on July the 4th, we have to make sure that if we're in North Ilford, we have to vote for Leanne Mohammed. If we're in Stratford and Bow, we have to vote for Fiona Lally, her name is. If we're in Holborn and St Pancras, we have to vote for Andrew Feinstein, because that way we might get Starmer out of Parliament, which means he would not be able to be the next Prime Minister, and anybody but Starmer would be better. Okay, so that's it, and obviously we have to, if we're in, where is he? Is he in Blackburn? Craig.
Yeah, but didn't he stand down?
Has he stood down?
Someone told me that today. He's just announced he stood down, but I might be wrong about that.
We should find out. Shall I ring him?
Yeah, give him a call.
I'll ring him.
Just get him in.
Oh, he can't come in.
He's good on camera.
He's in Blackburn, for God's sake. Who used to play centre forward for Blackburn?
Chris Sutton and Alan Shearer.
Alan Shearer, yeah. After Newcastle.
No, that was before Newcastle.
Was it?
He started at Southampton, then went to Blackburn, then went to Newcastle.
All right, good. Well, that's dealt with what we do in the short term here, which is the general election. Go on, now we've dealt with nuclear war. What else?
We need a new political party or movement.
So right, you know, we were talking. Did you hear it last night?
Yeah.
Garda Comey is her name, doctor. She after we'd had several. What were we drinking?
Waters mainly.
Mainly water and mezcal, as I recall.
Oh, mezcal, so yeah.
Yeah, she was saying that a combination of the Green Party and Gaza, Green Party and Gaza together, that could be a new labour movement that could grow into this. And I remember I had a bit of a conversation with her about that, and I can't remember what I said, but it was I felt that it had to be broader. Oh, I know what I said. No,
A human
there
rights
has
party.
to be a new party for the left wing or for Labour, and it's a party that is only about equal human rights for everybody. Because if you have a party that believes in that, all the questions are answered in that moment. So that is the new party. The new left in England cares about human rights. Everything else follows from that.
Yeah.
So there we are.
But we need to be ready, man, because it's like you're talking about the 1930s, right? It does feel to me, not that I was alive in the 1930s, but I've never felt that we're on the precipice of fascism, essentially.
Yeah.
Like we are, not just here in the US with Trump. Europe is there on the rise everywhere, and the left's nowhere in terms of organized left.
Yeah.
They've got a much simpler message than us. They are organized,
Foreigners,
and they're brutal,
Yeah.
and they don't have any moral compunction about doing certain things that we wouldn't do. So, but in that context, we have to step up, because this is something that if it's not fought,
and also they completely support the capitalist system,
yeah, of course,
just like the Nazis did in Germany, in the 30s.
and most of the fascists support Israel by coincidence.
Yeah,
I wonder what it is about Israel that they like so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Why does the West care a lot about Israel?
What?
Why does the West care a lot about Israel?
The West?
Yeah, America and Europe and the UK.
why do they support?
Why
Oil?
do they undermine their
Oil.
values?
It's having a military base in the Middle East, I think, and being able to affect the politics of the Middle East. I suspect that's what it is.
But also, any leader that rises up that might have a policy that's different, like Jeremy Corbyn, gets destroyed by the lobby.
Yeah.
So that's another obstacle to ever.
It
withdraw in
looks
that
more
sport.
and more as we watch what goes on in America this week and last week and the week before, as if like it's no longer any question about which is the dog and which is the tail. Israel is making all the decisions, and they're now going to bow down in obeisance while the actual leader of i.e. Netanyahu comes and talks to Congress. And one or two people are apparently going to boycott his speech and not go and listen to it, but only one or two.
Yeah,
and I
let's make a
guarantee the
difference.
rest of them will be all on their hind legs applauding. So they're absolutely applauding the genocide. It gives Congress a public platform to applaud the burying alive of 20,000 children.
Literally.
Literally. Oh, well done. That's what it is.
What can we expect from Keir Starmer, you reckon?
Who?
Sorry, Sir Keir Starmer.
What do you mean?
Like, what he's going to be Prime Minister in just over a week. What do we have to look forward to?
No, he won't. Andrew's going to get more votes, and so they'll have to pick somebody else from the Labour ranks, who won't be much different, I doubt, from Keir Starmer, because it's like a cut-out puppet that they've got. You know, it's a mixture of Noddy and Tony Blair. But anyway, so what do we expect from him? Just more of the same. He's going to austerity. That's the main thing. Less money for poor people, or for the health service, or for education, or any of that stuff. Okay, and more collaboration with Washington, and more war.
Yep.
More war. Conscription. Why don't we send some British boys over there to fight in Ukraine or wherever, or in Russia? Let's go and fight in Russia. Yeah, we can beat the Russians, but didn't they defeat the Wehrmacht and lost 20 million people? We haven't got 20 million people. Yeah, they did. But why do you want to have a war with them? It's crazy. They won the Second World War on their own. Had nothing to do with Normandy or the Second Front. They'd won it already. It was over when we joined in. And you want to go and have a fight with them? Whew.
Yeah, not smart.
And then the Chinese after that. Really? Brilliant. It's so insane that, we can't.
Are you hopeful? Well, I was listening to what you were saying, Ahmed, about your family, and you were glad that they died because they didn't have to suffer the humiliation that they're putting the people of Gaza through. That was quite a powerful statement, and I was just thinking, do you find hope?
I wouldn't say
Can
I'm
you find
glad.
hope?
I wouldn't say I'm glad I lost my family. I would
Not
say
glad.
I'm relieved in some way
Yes.
that they didn't
Yeah.
witness all of what followed their death, actually.
Yes.
Actually, about hope, it's complicated. Sometimes I would be very hopeful. Sometimes I would be like, I would sink in the depth of despair.
Well, we're all the same, mate.
Sorry?
We're all the same.
We're all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do that. We all sink into the depths of despair. You know, you don't have to be Palestinian to feel the depths of despair if you have empathy, which we do. We all do. And so it's very, very difficult for all of us at the moment.
But eventually, like sometimes I would be hopeful, because if you read history, you would know that every single nation that fought for their independence and sovereignty, no matter how long the occupation lasts, eventually it will be over.
Well, you're right.
Palestinian people, you know, when I meet with Palestinians, the Palestinian people are so different from everyone. They're the most powerful, resilient, proud people you could ever meet.
I believe you.
And I'm telling you, like, what I have been through, it's a lot. And I survived. I did not sink into deep depression and isolate myself and wept the loss of my family. I fought back, and I spoke out from day one. And I am privileged here. People in Gaza, 2.2 million people, they have been through hell, literally, and they're still fighting back. They are still very powerful. They're resilient, and the journalists, God bless them, they're still working despite everything. So they give me a lot of hope, the Palestinians.
Well, that's a very good thing. They do me too. I said to Leanne earlier today when I was talking to her, Mohammed, Ilford North, I said, where are your family from? You know, and Haifa. Her grandparents were kicked out of Haifa in 1948 and then eventually ended up here. And immediately my brain went, Kanafani.
Yeah, Ghassan Kanafani.
Return to Haifa.
Yeah, عائد إلى حيفا.
Yeah.
Wow, you read that?
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful little kind of novella, you know, and the story is so perfect. No wonder they had to murder him, which they did. He was, 35 years old or something? Yeah. And he was in Beirut in Lebanon, and they murdered him. Yeah. Simply because he could write, and he wrote ideas that were fascinating.
So did Rifat Al-Arair, the co-founder of We Are Not Numbers.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
Who?
Rifat Al-Arair, Dr. Rifat. He was the co-founder of We Are Not Numbers. He's a university professor.
Yeah.
And they killed him over a tweet in Gaza in this war. They killed him, and they killed many of his family, and then a few months later they killed his daughter and his grandchild.
Rafi, the kite guy.
The kite, yeah.
Yeah.
So these the intellectuals and professors, they think of them as danger. So they eliminate them. So of course they will kill Ghassan Kanafani.
And you know what? We are a danger. We are a danger. You know,
we are a danger to injustice.
We're a danger to the interests of the devil. We're a danger to them because words are powerful and music is powerful and blah 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 blah. And so, and I've read his poetry a bit, and obviously that one particularly.
Yeah. He was my mentor.
Was he? So he taught you English?
So him and I, and others started We Are Not Numbers, the organization that trained writers.
I didn't know he was involved. I knew you were involved. That's amazing.
Yeah, he was involved from the very beginning. He was our teacher. He is the one who used to teach our writers how to write. He's a terrific writer.
I know.
Yeah, that was a big loss.
Yeah.
That was a tweet over a piece, you know, like one of the many pieces of Israeli propaganda that came out after October 7th. One was, you know, the 40 beheaded babies, and then systematic rape, and then one of them was babies baked in an oven.
In an oven.
And then he made a joke about it on Twitter, and then there was an Israeli journalist who had an inside source called Richard Silverstein, and he said that his source had told him that the Israeli Security Cabinet had met, or whoever this unit that decided on targets, and they'd actually explicitly said that tweet is enough, and we got to kill him. And then he got a phone call, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he was at a school,
Yeah.
and they said, "We're going to kill you."
So he went to his
And
sisters.
he went to his sisters, yeah. And then they targeted only the apartment and killed.
Yeah.
This is like
So was that an
Pol Pot
assassination?
stuff.
Yeah.
This is like, and we did do a video about this early on in a genocide about how they were targeting the best and brightest of Gaza to destroy any kind of intellectual or anyone that could give provide life in Gaza, medics, lawyers.
They also killed all the top university professors in Gaza.
Right, I know that
73 or 74. The top professors, they killed them, assassinated them. The doctors, the best doctors, the journalists, the families of the journalists, the hospitals, the schools. So they from the very beginning, they wanted to destroy and kill anything or anyone that would give way of life to the people in Gaza.
Nothing can be the same after this.
And it's screened like live for people to watch. And some people are applauding genocide, like what you just said. So that, when I see this, when I contemplate this, it makes me feel very, it would like really make me in the depth of despair. But then I would remember the Palestinians, the resilience and their power, and I would be hopeful. So it's complicated. It's
also, personally, I never felt this much clarity in my life. Like, we know where everyone stands now. We've had 8 months of this. We know everyone has shown who they are, and we know where we never had that in this so defined. And basically, anyone who's got like within a sniff of the power system is an enemy. You know, they all supported it. Labour, Tory, Democrats, Republicans, doesn't matter. They're all the enemy. And that's good that we know that. Well, I mean, we knew it, but it's never been this clear.
No,
and it's not just clear to us. Like,
Yeah.
it's clear to. It's like you said, you know, if you've had 8-9 months now of people looking at their phones and seeing this horror, and then looking at their TVs and watching journalists lie about it, and there's that contradiction for them. Then they're looking at the political leaders from Labour and Tory and say, well, they both support what I'm watching on my phone. And that's having a massive impact on a lot of people, because people haven't been exposed to how the world really works like this, ever.
Right.
And there's no way you can avoid it now, because it's just in your face.
Yeah.
And the Israelis make it even easier for this awakening, because Yoav Gallant goes on TV and says, we're dealing with human animals. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like Bush and Blair, when they invaded Iraq, they niced it up. They said, we want to bring democracy and peace and all this stuff.
To the people of Iraq.
Of course it was lies, and I'm not saying, but they felt they needed to.
This evil dictator.
Yeah, we love the Iraqi people, exactly. But the Israelis are like, they don't even bother with all that now.
No.
It's out the window. It's just like, we're dealing with human savages. We're going to cut off water from 1 million kids, and I mean, this is.
You tried a few minutes ago before we stopped for a piss.
Yeah.
I think, or just after. You said you were going to ask something about Pink Floyd songs. And you've forgotten that now.
No, it's something I'm interested in, because
What,
my dad's a political artist. He's an artist. Yeah. He does photo montage and that kind of thing. But firstly, it's rare to have like a band like of the size of Pink Floyd that you did political work in your heyday. You didn't shy away from it.
Yeah.
But you did. How do you marry politics and art like that without making it a sledgehammer, without beating people over the head, without making it just agitprop? You know, how do you make it art? Keep
you mean
art.
Without being Billy Bragg?
Wow.
Sorry, Billy.
I didn't want to name any names, but you've done that.
Billy, I apologise. Anyway, well, I've already told you the answers to all of those questions. Well, we've been sitting around this table for the last hour or whatever it is.
Your mother.
Well, whatever. It's about having a heart and caring about things. And you can only paint what you see, and you can only talk about what you feel. And the fact is that in what you call the heyday of Pink Floyd, which is, I think it's fair, I call it the golden years, which is from when Sid went crazy till when I left. I was writing everything, And so everything that I felt about everything is in all of the songs that I wrote during that 17 years or however long. And after I left Pink Floyd, I went on writing everything there. And it's all the same. It's just a continuation of the same stuff. So if you go to Amused to Death or even Radio Chaos or any of the albums, and to Is This the Life We Really Want, you know, which was the last one I made, which was a few years ago now, and to The Bar, which is the beginnings of the new record that I'm making. It's all about human rights. It starts with Echoes, which was in 1970, before Dark Side of the Moon. There's a verse in that song that goes, "Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glasses meet, and I am you, and what I see is me." And that's it.
I literally wanted to ask you about this specific paragraph. It's written here.
Oh, really?
It's very, very, very powerful. And I wanted to ask you about it. It's very powerful.
All right. Well, so good. What do you want to ask? Because I'm sort of telling you
What's
about
the story? What's the story behind it?
Well,
it's very powerful. Like when I read it.
It's me, aged whatever I was, 26 or something. How old was I? 1970. I can't do the math. 27. So suddenly having the realization that I'm connected to all other human beings on Earth, and that anybody that I pass in the street, I can meet their gaze, and we are the same person, because we're both here, and we're both human, and we both have the same genomes, and we're both in the same sort of social scenario, in the same piece of history and whatever. You are my brother or my sister. And we are connected, and we may never know. We may walk past each other in the street, but I feel the connection with you. So I'm going to put it in a song. And do I ask you to move on? No one calls us to move on. No one forces down our eyes. No one speaks, and no one tries, and no one flies around the sun. So I'm talking in that simple kind of schoolboy doggerel, if you like. I'm not all that proud of that in terms of the craft. But I'm proud of the meaning of it, which is to say, if you want to fly around the sun, you have to recognize your brother or sister when you pass them in the street, or see them being murdered by the Israelis on the other side, at the other end of the Mediterranean. It's the same thing. Either you feel a connection with other human beings or you don't. And if you do, you can have empathy and you can believe in universal human rights, because you can put yourself into the place of the other and sympathize with them and empathize with them and feel their pain. Not as much as they feel their pain. My kids aren't all buried under rubble. They're sitting down and cooking dinner. They're all right. But so that is the beginning of the Roger Waters Pink Floyd period. It was a song called Echoes. And much as, they'd like to tell you that we all did it all together, we didn't.
Were the other band members on the same sort of wavelength as you politically?
No.
Or were you just leading them?
I just led them.
What about Sid? Was Sid political?
No. Not even faintly at any point. So we went down this road, and so metal was that was an inkling. Though, let's not forget, Corporal Clegg was on the first album, 1967. That's a political song. Corporal Clegg had a wooden leg. He won it in the war, in 1944. And his wife's an alcoholic, and it's a social comment, political exercise, albeit a bit crude and abrupt. But I can't get away from it, and it's not a burden. It's a gift. It's a gift. Oh my God, I feel things about things. I can write songs about it, and I'm not sort of blaming Rick or Nick or Dave, but he's never had a thought in his life, and he never will. It's not him. You either care about things and you have feelings and you can write about them, or you don't. And nobody knows where it comes from or what it's about. But all that work, that we did, that I'm really proud of, and so are they, I think. Like through Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here and Animals and The Wall and the final cut, by the way, which is denigrated by some of them, but they're wrong. That's a really important piece of work. And that's talking about waiting for cattle trucks, waiting for the next time. Cattle trucks lying in wait for the next time. And we're seeing it now in Gaza. That is a prophecy made in 1982 of things to come. And we'll see it here too if we don't take notice and if we don't take heed. That's what all those songs on the final cut are about, because I've just seen the Atlantic conveyor go to the bottom in the Falkland Islands and the General Belgrano and Mrs. Thatcher's approval rating go from 4 to 94 just because she's killed a few hundred Argies. Woo! Well done, Maggie!
Yeah.
You're a murderess. Maggie over tea one day sank a cruiser with all hands, apparently, to get it back. So, yeah. So it's good. And to have had that opportunity, when Sid went loopy and couldn't write anymore, somebody had to do something about it. And I was lucky that I felt things strongly enough to be able to write things about it. Even if it's like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Remember when we were young, you shone like the sun. And I'm really proud of that song. It had nothing to do with the rest of the band. They were kind of great, you know.
What do you reckon would have happened if Sid hadn't gone loopy then? Would you, because I remember
No
reading in
idea.
interviews you've said this, where you're like, well, I wasn't ready and I kind of got thrown in at the deep end because I had to start writing.
Well, funnily enough, I'd already had songs on the first album and on the second album when Sid was still there. So it may have been that my nascent need to express my feelings may have risen to the surface, but not in the way that it did, because it had to fill in all the space. And that's obviously what caused all the trouble in the band, is that it's all strong stuff and it didn't sit well with the rest of them, or some of them maybe a little bit.
What major influences were there on your lyric writing? Because the lyrics are really amazing, and like, did you read like poets like Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon? And
I'd read Wilfred Owen, what's the Latin tag? I can't remember. In Patria Mori, to die for your country is the whatever. So, which is amazing. That's it, where Wilfred Owen talks about a man dying of poison gas.
Yeah, he's
oh, fuck me.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I've read Graves a bit and blah, 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 but I think this is all and did I like some songs? Yeah. Eleanor Rigby, so a couple of the Beatles songs, whatever. Maybe a bit of Dylan. So I've liked the work of other people working in Georgia on My Mind, Hoagie Carmichael, which he wrote for years. I thought it was Ray Charles who'd written it, and it wasn't. It's Hoagie Carmichael. And so yeah, I always liked songs and things. But my body of work is like kind of quirky, because it moves with history. It's not by accident that the beginning of the final cut, tell me true, tell me why was Jesus crucified? Was it for this that Daddy died? Was it you? Was it me? Did I watch too much TV? Is that a hint of accusation in your eye? If it wasn't for the Nips being so good at building ships, the yards would still be open on the Clyde. And it can't be much fun for them beneath the rising sun with all their kids committing suicide. It's weird that I can still remember the lyrics to these things. Maggie, what have we done? So I get a slight tingle about how fucking good that is,
sure.
It's like, ooh, that's kind of weirdly heavy, and in a good way. So,
do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't become a rock star? What do you think you would have done?
I dread to think I might have stayed in architecture, which I wasn't really keen on, but I could have done it.
Yeah.
They all said, "Oh, you're very talented," and blah blah blah.
Okay.
And you'll be good.
That's what you would have been, an architect.
Yeah. Well, I studied for 5 years. Studied architecture for 5 years.
Okay.
But so I knew that what I wouldn't be good at was lying to clients. And you have to be good at that to be a successful architect. If you want to be Norman Foster, you've got to be a great bullshit artist. To be allowed to build that fucking pineapple in the middle of the city of London, you have to have an enormous talent.
I think you can't be a politician, can you?
No.
No,
Because you'll have to lie a lot.
he's leading the new party. That's
No, I couldn't do that.
Well, also, I just wanted to ask before we finish, like,
Yeah.
the influence of your mum on your life, because
Yeah.
we were talking a bit last night about it in a more personal way, but you just mentioned about her, that conversation you had, which always stuck with you, about just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, she sounds like a powerful woman, like
Yeah.
that had a major influence on everything that's happened in your life. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was a bit of an ingenue as well as being powerful. She'd been brought up in Golders Green in a nice home with a, probably detached with a hedge, and she'd gone off to some girls' boarding school when she was, I have no idea when, and blah, blah, blah. And then she'd become a teacher. She did teacher training at the Froebel Institute in Roehampton, which was very modern at the time, in that they believed that in order to educate children, you had to interest them in what it was that you were you couldn't teach by rote. This is what's wrong with American education, is it very much formulaic, and have a list and there's a right and a wrong answer and blah blah. She said, no, you have to be. So I remember she never taught me, but at my primary school she was a teacher there, and I remember she did things with her kids called centre of interest. So you would base everything that you worked on for a term or something about a particular tribe of people in Polynesia or somewhere, and how they lived and how the kids grew and blah blah and all that stuff, which is great. But one thing happened to my mum, and that was she did her teacher training in Bradford. She'd never been to the north of England. She went up there and she taught in working class district of Bradford. And she developed two real things there. One was a huge love of wild country, Ilkley Moor, and all of that. But the other was, the first winter she was only there for a year, but in the winter, she went out in the morning one morning to ring the bell for the kids to come in, and it had been snowing. It was the first, and half a dozen of the kids were in bare feet, and they'd walk to school in bare feet through the snow, and it went ding.
Wow.
Whoa! And so she kind of looked into it a bit, and a lot of industry, obviously, in Bradford, but that really struck her, and she became politicized. I think in that instance, just of seeing children with freezing feet in the morning before they came into school, and she went, "There's something wrong with this." So it's pure Charles Kingsley. Water Babies, right? Have you read the Water Babies? You should do. It's sort of, and it doesn't matter, mid-19th century. Fantasy. It's about a chimney sweep who can't get down the chimney. He comes out through the fireplace into a bedroom in this big house where he's sweeping the chimney, and it's one of the daughters of the house, a little girl. It's her room, and she discovers him in there, and is very frightened at her. And he starts talking, but then somebody comes and bangs on the door, and they see him, and he jumps out the window and runs off down the hill and falls in the river and drowns. And the whole of the rest of the book is about his afterlife as a water baby. It's the weirdest thing. And what's good about it, that I never forgot, it was my grandmother turned me onto it, my other grandmother, not my Granny Waters, my Granny B. And there are two characters in it, in this book, that this water baby meets in his travels underwater. It's the kid sweep who's dead. And these characters are called Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done By and Mrs. Be Done By As You Did. And they're very important characters, and they're still very important characters for us, because think about what you're doing, Israelis. You should be Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done By, but you may become Mrs. Be Done By As You Did. There is a moral compass out there somewhere, and there is a price to be paid for this kind of evil behaviour.
Did your mum, how old were you when your mum died then?
She died in 2008. So.
Oh right, so she saw. So what did she make of your career then? Was she?
You know, darling, I'm completely tone deaf, so the music means nothing to me. But I think some of your words are very good.
Okay.
Interesting. But she came to the odd gig. Yeah,
did she?
But it was all a bit lost on her.
Right.
To be honest.
And your dad died when you were a baby, is that right?
5 months, yeah.
What impact do you think that had on you?
Well, obviously huge. I write in my memoir, there's a bit near the beginning of the memoir where I say, I'm talking about the fact that I had a recurrent dream through most of my life, which was that I'd murdered somebody and that I was responsible and blah, 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 blah. And it's normally a waiter, somebody completely innocent of any crime, but I'd knifed them. The knife goes in under the rug and I wake up in a terrible sweat. I've murdered somebody and blah, blah, blah. And when I was about 50, I realised that I'd carried this with me all my life because as a 5-month-old, not as 5-month-old, but when my father didn't come back from the war and I was told he was missing, presumed dead, I assumed it was my responsibility. I'd killed him. Like babies at the centre of the world, and anything that happens, they think they did it. God knows what the babies in Gaza are going to make. Every time a bomb falls and their family gets blown to bits, they will take responsibility for it, at least. So, yeah, so that was kind of my experience.
Have you searched his life? Have you done much research into who he was and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you find?
Well, he grew up in service in the house of a doctor in a small village in County Durham called Copley, where his mother was the housekeeper. His father had been killed on the 13th of September 1916 in the Battle of the River Somme, where he was in Company 256 Mining Company. This is George Henry, who was my grandfather on my father's side. So he never came back. So he was killed in 1916. My father was born in 1914. So there are sort of weird similarity in that, in all of that. And but then he was a clever kid, you know, and he got a scholarship to the grammar school in Bishop Auckland, and then he went to Durham University and blah 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 blah. And here's the kicker: is that after he'd done that, he did some teacher training, and where did he get his first job? Is it George's or David's school in Jerusalem? He taught in St George's. There's a school.
St George's.
I think it's either St George's or St David's school in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And he taught like PE and English or something like that. And he lived there for 2 years. That's where he wrote the letters back to my grandmother saying he was worried about what was going to happen to the indigenous population, because he could see Zionism taking root, because it was in 1934 and 1935.
Interesting.
And then he came back. He came back to England before the war, and then he was called up, and he went, I'll tell you the rest of the story because it's fundamental to me, obviously. Yeah. And he was a conscientious objector because he was very religious Christian. He said, I can't kill anyone. And they accepted that, you know. And
this
so
was the Second World War. Yeah.
Second World War, yeah. So September 1939.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, can you drive, Waters? Yes, sir, I can, you know. And he said, do you think you could drive an ambulance? I'm sure I could, sir. He said, Waters, EF, London Ambulance Service. Next. So he drove, so he was in the London Ambulance Service then, because he said he'd do anything so long as he didn't have to kill anybody. Wow. That was the only thing that was forbidden because he was a Christian. So he did, and he drove through, and he met my mum in the Blitz, 1941. And so I write a bit about that as well, and it goes, would you like a cup of tea? Because she was serving tea to people in bomb shelters,
right? And
he was an ambulance driver, so they, you know, whatever. And I wrote this bit that goes, would you like a cup of tea? And I wrote my father's response without thinking about it, making it up, obviously. And I wrote, don't mind if I do, like. And I went, fuck me, I've given my father a Geordie accent. And it had never crossed my mind. I wrote it like a year ago.
Right.
And it had never crossed my mind that my father had an accent. He's the son of a fucking coal miner from County Durham. Of course he had an accent.
Right.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's amazing. Because obviously you wouldn't have any recording of him back then.
No, and I'd never heard his voice. And yet, the beginning of my book as well, it has this song that I only wrote in the bar. It's in the bar. Before I was born, my brother used to sit on Daddy's lap when he was home on leave. Daddy'd smoke a cigarette, and sometimes as a jest, he'd blow smoke rings up my big brother's sleeve. More fire, Daddy, my big brother would shout. At least that's how the story has survived. I was mercifully spared the memories that they shared because I was only 5 months old when Daddy died.
Wow.
So that's full of all kinds of, stuff as well.
Of course.
And what I say in the piece is I say it's obvious, I was born on the 6th of September 1943. There's a photograph there. I'm the little cross-eyed kid sitting on my mother's lap, cross-eyed baby. I said, blah, 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 blah. And 5 months later, the blowing smoke rings up Big Brother's sleeve bloke, he suddenly drops dead. He's been going strong for 30 years. The cross-eyed, and I come along and he drops dead. You don't have to be Sigmund Freud or Sherlock Holmes to figure it out. The cross-eyed kid done it. End of story. I know it's a bit
No, I know what you mean. It's like it's Freudian, isn't it? It's all unconscious as well.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it had a massive impact on everything in your life.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Did your mum remarry or not?
No, and that's another.
So you never had a father figure?
I can't tell you the whole bloody memoir, but my mother, no, she never had another relationship with a man at all, as far as I know.
So you you had no male role model growing up?
Which is why
Did you
I had
search
so
for
many
one?
bad marriages.
Oh, right, is that?
Well, women have all the power. If a woman and her sisters and whatever, and if there's no man around, you just kind of accept that power is situated absolutely in the other sex.
Right.
And I did suffer from that for 3 or 4 marriages.
Which we're now going to go into. Now let's go into the marriages now.
No, before we go to the marriages, let's go to the pub.
Do you have any more questions?
Is our work here done?
No, can I ask one more?
Yeah, go on.
This is just before we end.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a story? Because I went to Islington Green, which is the school in Islington, obviously.
I know where it is, yeah.
In the 90s. And we knew when we were there that was where you guys recorded the kids for Another Brick in the Wall. Can you just talk a little about how you came to go into that school?
Yes, I can. Well, you guys didn't record the kids in there because we were in Los Angeles at the time, making The Wall with Bob Ezrin and James Guthrie, who were co-producing it. But I'd written Another Brick and we'd recorded it and whatever. And one day I thought, what this needs is kids, preferably Cockney kids. And I remembered there was a primary school just up the road from Britannia Road where the studio was that we'd already bought. So I said, send that 24 track to Nick Griffiths, who was an engineer who was working for us. And I called him up or sent him an email, I can't remember, and said, Nick, see if you can get some kids from Islington Green School, get them in the studio, and I'll send you the tape. I'll put a vocal on it, be able to follow, and get them to sing the verse. All right. And so I did. And he did. The headmistress was very friendly and they called cooperative, so they did that. And he sent it back, and I arrived back at Producers Workshop, which is on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I said, Brian, put that on just thread it up. And yeah, I'll get. No, don't do that. Just throw all the faders up, and we'll see what's on there. And he pressed play, and it was like, I can feel shivers down my spine now, just
Wow.
remembering the sound of those Cockney children singing that song was just like, oh my God, this is a fucking hit. You know,
Yeah.
this is could be, we're going to have to lengthen this, you know,
Yeah.
put another verse in. Because it was only one verse long. So we did. So there's one song with me and Dave singing in unison, and then there's the kids, and then we put a guitar solo on. So that's the story. So the guy who deserves all the credit is Nick Griffith,
Okay.
who's dead, sadly. He got cancer and died. And the kids. And it was like, when was it?
Weren't they
50
trying to
years ago?
sue you guys or something at one point to get money or
No,
no?
it's all nonsense. Somebody tried
I
to
thought-
start a story
Right.
suggesting that we'd ripped them off or this or
Right.
that or the other. And somebody an ambulance chaser went round trying to get some of those kids who by now were 50 years old
Right.
or something, because it was 30 years later. And bless them, apparently, to a man and a woman, they all went, fuck off, that was the best time of my life.
Really?
making that record.
Nice. Nice.
Can't tell you how proud we all are of the fact that we were involved in that project.
Great.
You know, not even money.
Great.
Fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There's-
mean, if they needed money, I'd give them money if I had any left. Well,
Yeah.
I do have money left, but that's not the point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Nick Griffiths, he's the man who deserves all that credit.
It's now it failed its Ofsted and doesn't exist anymore. They knocked it down. It's just that there's no Islington
Islington
Green.
Green School.
Does not exist.
That is a bummer.
And it is a bummer. It is.
Why did they knock it down?
I don't know the story. They felt, you know, the Ofsted. They introduced the new Labour government introduced the inspections.
Don't you say New Labour to me. Not in polite company, son.
Well, Tony Blair creature. When they introduced that, they failed it, and I think when you fail it, you have. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the politics were, but anyway, they failed it, and then it got shut down, and then they knocked it down, and it was like it was right next to Packington Estate, you know, like
I know,
that's what.
I know.
Yeah, well,
it
those
was a
kids
council,
probably
big
came. Yeah,
council
yeah, it was.
estate, yeah. It
Packet
would have been
and-
part of their community.
Yeah.
Like a really good part of the community. You live there and your school's here and
Yeah.
the pub's there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the church is there.
Yeah.
Because I played a gig in that church with Lucius when they were in town one day.
Right.
We did a gig in there. But
Yeah, it's changed a lot though now. I mean, like,
yeah, I bet it had.
it's not. It's
Well,
not what it
isn't
was.
that where Corbyn is standing? Islington North?
Yeah, I think that is in his constituency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to him too.
Good luck to JC. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good luck. Ahmed, have you got any other questions
Any more questions, Simon?
about his marriages?
I'm so glad to be in this room because I've watched you two,
Oh, you did.
binging and bonging, and him.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
Omar Aziz over
Yeah,
there.
it's-
And I watched your very, very long interviews with particularly that one woman.
Hala Abu Libda.
Oh man, that was amazing.
That was amazingly moving.
You know, that was the only time I've ever done an interview, and she stopped. She did a 10-minute monologue, and then no one spoke for like
No,
30
I
seconds.
think he's talking about another Hala.
Oh,
I think he's
right.
talking about Hala Abu Libda, the one who
Oh,
lost
yeah.
her family.
Yeah,
Not the one I was. Okay.
yeah, that's what.
Because we have another Hala. Her name is Hala, not Hala. And she's also a legend as well.
Don't try and
Yeah.
teach her to speak proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe we should watch the other interview we did. That was maybe in November with Muhammad Likud. Was very powerful.
Yeah.
What do you think of Palestine Deep Dive before we go? What do you think about what Palestine Deep Dive, what they're doing?
Shall I ask him? You?
No, we're asking you.
Oh, what?
What do you think of what these boys
Oh,
are
it's
getting up to?
fantastic.
It's good, right?
I love Palestine Deep Dive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing things with Mark
Yeah.
years ago. And occasionally, I would come on and bang on about it. My favourite run-in with Palestine Deep Dive was going to the Durham Miners Gala dinner in Covent Garden with him, Omar, and Mark Seddon.
Yeah.
Like a year ago, 2 years, something like that. God, what a good evening that was.
Nice.
You know, it's funny about that, the thing of northern working folk, you know, just the atmosphere of the whole thing is really so moving.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling is there, and it's all over the world, with all working people everywhere. And they look after one another, and there's a feeling of community. And until somebody comes in with a bit of capital and sticks some machinery down the road and hires them for a pittance, you know, to whatever. Don't get me started, obviously, but
it's true. Yeah, we live in a society where that has to be, it's beaten out of people's heads, isn't it, by the culture that we live in. Like,
what has to be beaten out?
The idea, this very natural thing of like caring for people, community, and humans are social beings, right?
Of course.
And yet we grow up and we're told, we're atomized by the society. We're told we have to consume to have meaning, and we're in individuals, and I think we're taught all the wrong things.
Of course we are. Yeah.
But it does exist in these certain communities. You don't see it much in London. I went to uni in Leeds, and I did notice the difference in like just the way of seeing the world up north. It's
really,
like, they're just like a small example. Like if you get on a bus in Leeds, the driver will say hello to you and say, "How you doing, Duque?" All right. Well, do we need to wrap up formally?
Yeah, wrap up formally.
Roger and Mr. Waters.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
You've given us many pearls of wisdom,
Mr. Kennard.
No, it's been a pleasure. You're loved around the world for what you do. You have to know that. You're a unique figure.
Thank you.
We're proud of you, man.
And I need to tell you that the Palestinians know you. They watch you. They watch your speeches here and there.
Good.
They love you.
Well, I hope they'll
thank you
watch
very much
this
for doing that.
because I love them too. All right, so very much, and I'm not as happy as I look, and that's all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.